Hey guys, and welcome back to another video log hosted by Press Start to Start. I'm DJ Jazzy Jeff of Press Start to Start fame, one of two hosts and video recorder guys. And today I'm going to be talking to you. JD has some dumb sickness that made him lose his voice. I don't even know if he's going to be posting a vlog today. So I figured I should probably get on it. Especially since I skipped out on last week. So, today, I thought I'd talk about something that, I don't know, I find interesting and just kind of weird, both from a writer's standpoint, from a game player's standpoint, and just sort of as a fan standpoint. And it's the concept of canon. Which is, I guess, the idea that specific things really happen. It happens it's from any sort of fiction, books, movies, TV shows. For instance, at the end of Lord of the Rings, it's canonical that, spoiler alert, the ring gets destroyed. Gollum bites it off of Frodo's finger and falls into Mount Doom, and that's the end of that, right? But in video games, this is a little different because every person's gaming experience is slightly different from the previous person. Well, the other people playing it. So let me give you an example there. For instance, when I play through Metal Gear Solid, and, this is because I've been continually just playing over and over again Metal Gear Solid 2 HD on my 360. I've been thinking about this a lot. When I play through Metal Gear Solid 2, you're given the option to use a tranquilizer gun the entire game. And, meaning if you want to, you could not kill a single person the entire game, apart from the ones that are, plotline deaths and they happen whether you want them to or not. For instance, no matter what you do when you fight Fat Man, even if you use the tranquilizer gun, and kill him specifically by depleting his stamina, at the end of the cutscene he dies. So, what does this have to do with canon, you ask? Well, the question then becomes, what is canonical? Did the main character, because I'm super seriously trying to avoid spoilers here, did the main character go through that way with absolutely no kills? Did they have no alerts? Were they even spotted the entire game? How did it happen? And there's no real, official stance on some things like that. And it just occurs to me as a strange aspect of video games. What are the canonical skill choices for Shepard in Mass Effect? Is Shepard male or female? And the funny thing is that it doesn't really matter, right? These kind of things don't matter at all in the long run. The next game will come out, and whether it confirms it or it doesn't, it shouldn't affect whether the game is still fun. It shouldn't really affect your enjoyment. But for some reason, as fans, we tend to get really worked up about it. A big offshoot of fans debating canon is the whole, and excuse me while I get a little nauseous as I say this, shipping idea, which is short for relationshipping, in that, fans pick out specific people that they think, end up together, I guess. They have relationships that aren't expanded on in the game, or in the book, or movie, or whatever, because this is something that happens in all kinds of fandom. And the thing is, if it's never explicitly stated in the media, then fans can really believe whatever they want to believe, which leads to the really hilariously self-important term, headcanon. But the thing is, it's actually pretty descriptive, because it describes the specific canon that you yourself believe in. Which, again, doesn't matter. It's not going to really change anything about the game. It's not going to really change what the makers do about it, or what they consider canon. Which is why it's weird that it's so important to us as gamers and as media experiencers. You know, we want what we believe to be the real way. The end of Inception, for example. You can have really huge fights where people really just get in, like, fists all up in each other's faces over what actually happens at the end of Inception. But the funny thing is, whether or not it is or it isn't, it doesn't actually matter. None of the characters in it are real. None of the actors actually experienced any of those things. And it doesn't actually, like, you're not going to go back in time and stop yourself from enjoying a movie or make yourself enjoy it. Although, to be fair, a different canonical choice can make one person look back on something and say, oh, you're correct, that actually was clever, and I actually will enjoy this from the future. But that's about it. It's a one-way street. Although some people get so worked up in this kind of, these canonicy, these debates, that it actually does make them not like the media would experiencing in the future. For example, Harry Potter. There were a lot of things that happened in the final book that a lot of people get extremely worked up about. And apparently it has ruined the entire series for them. And whether or not they're overreacting or not doesn't matter, because even if you're overreacting, it can still, you know, you still won't like those things. That's just how people work. Like, you can't logic someone else into, like, well, you can logic someone else into liking something, because we're really weird like that. But if you have failed to logic someone else into liking or disliking it, they're going to keep feeling that way, whether or not it makes sense to. So, it's just a funny issue to take into effect. And it sparked a lot of debates, particularly about Metal Gear Solid 2, on what is canon and what isn't. Because by the end of the game, there's a huge question of what actually happened during the entire game. And what's funny is, although Metal Gear Solid 4, you know, explained to somewhat exhaustive end what a lot of those things were, there was still a lot of stuff left up in the air. And it's up for each person to decide what it actually means. And again, the funniest thing about it is it doesn't really matter. I can't really pound this home hard enough, because it's very important to me that each person experiences media and games in a way that they find the most enjoyable. So, I mean, I'm not going to argue with someone over if Sora and Riku are, you know, secretly lovers, although there's really nothing canonical that points to that. If you imagining that and finding all of the little details that point to it makes sense to you. That's a Kingdom Hearts reference, by the way. But the important thing is not to get upset at someone else for the different canon that they have. I don't know. As usual, I don't really know what I'm saying here. If you weren't aware that these things happen, it's really interesting. People get really, really worked up over this. And if you were, I guess my main point is, seriously, like, we should talk about this kind of stuff, because it's super interesting to find out what other people think happens in these things. Maybe Snake is secretly a super huge murderer who broke the neck personally of every single guard in Metal Gear Solid 1. Or maybe he was never spotted at all, except for by the bosses. That's what's weird about video games. For each person, they actually experience these different characters. And because video games work that way, like, all it does is confirm it for them. At the end of the game, you see a line out of how many people you killed. And for each person, that is the canonical one that happened, because there's nothing to argue differently about it. And the game, in fact, reinforces it by saying it did, in fact, happen. And then sometimes it goes back on it later, and that just pisses off more people. So anyway, food for thought. Have a nice one. Boop.